I bet you didn't know this was written by Sandra Monday in 2014, called Cold War 2.0 Sucks. This is to demonstrate how I saw ahead of time the dangerous place that the US was leading Ukraine to by supporting extremist right-wing forces within the nation, and how this could one day lead to World War III. Cold War 2.0 sucks. The Nazis are coming. The Nazis are coming. The Sound of Music. Welcome, folks, to the ludicrous comedy known as Cold War 2.0, and as usual, the remake is even crappier than the original. My old political punk band, the June Cleavers, had a song about that. Remake revision for those lacking in vision. Remake, the product of no imagination, but that was back when we were just a twosome with Romero Vazquez on bass. Enough about my ancient history, let's delve into a little Russian times past, shall we? Yes, since the right-wing fear-mongering media is so hep on double-dealing to the entire world, I can't help but put my 2 cents in. So picture it, Crimea and Ukraine and Russia, and a base called the Black Sea Fleet. Prior to the breakup of the Soviet Union, both Crimea and Ukraine and Russia were all part of one unification known as the USSR. Crimea itself, a peninsula off of Ukraine, had been part of Russia for hundreds of years. Historically, Crimea has deep ties with Russia. Ukraine has only controlled the Crimean Peninsula since 1954, a claim we also heard from US Rep. Mike Roger, our Mitch, on Fox News Sunday. Not up on your Soviet history? We'll review the facts. Crimea is an eastern Ukrainian peninsula located on the Black Sea. It's connected to the rest of the country by a small strip of land. Out of its 2 million residents, about 60% identify as Russian. That's the highest concentration of Russian speakers in Ukraine. Although the territory belongs to Ukraine, Russia stations part of its Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol as part of a pre-existing agreement between the two countries. As Ignatius pointed out, Crimea hasn't always been part of Ukraine. Here's a quick rundown of what's happened in the region since the Ottoman Empire used the peninsula as a hub for the slave trade. 1783, Russia annexed Crimea. 1853, the Crimean War began, lasting 3 years. Russia lost to an alliance of the Ottoman Empire, France, Britain, and Sardinia. Crimea remained part of Russia. 1917. Crimea briefly became a sovereign state before becoming a base for the White Army of anti-Bolshevik forces in the Russian War. 1921. The peninsula, now called the Crimean Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, became part of the Soviet Union. 1942. Nazi Germany took control of Crimea. 1944. Joseph Stalin forcibly deported all Muslim Tatars, a group of 300,000 who had lived on the peninsula for centuries, due to members' alleged cooperation with Germany during World War II. Many returned to Crimea in the 1980s and 1990s. 1945. After World War II, the autonomous Soviet Republic was dissolved, and Crimea became a province of the Soviet Union called the Crimean Oblast. 1954, Russian Premier Nikita Khrushchev transferred the Crimean Oblast to Ukraine. It's often reported that it was a gesture of goodwill from Khrushchev, who had Ukrainian roots. 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed. Many expected President Boris Yeltsin, the new president of the Russian Federation, to take Crimea for Russia. But he didn't bring it up during negotiations with Ukraine. 1997. Ukraine and Russia signed a treaty that allowed Russia to keep its fleet in Sevastopol. The agreement's since been extended, so the fleet is set to remain there until at least 2042. Facts are facts. Crimea, which has a large Russian majority, has been part of Russia long before it was anything else. Mainstream media here in the West has demonized Putin, distorted facts, and told outright lies. The boldest being that this is about the freedom and self-determination of the Ukrainian people. This US and EU-sponsored coup d'etat is America's latest media blitzkrieg on Western sensibilities. What I see on different media platforms couldn't be more polar opposite. On alternative media, I see the neo-Nazis in their ski masks terrorizing the ethnic Russians and Jews in Kiev. But on CNN, I see Obama cuddling up with the unelected Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk. who just happens to have nominated 3 billionaire oligarchs to run the new government. Most eyebrow-raising is the role of Ukraine's richest man, billionaire Rinat Akhmetov, former moneybacker of Yanukovych. Akhmetov has pledged to do everything possible to maintain the integrity of our country. Akhmetov, whose SCM group controls nearly half of the country's coal, steel, ore, and thermoelectricity sectors, is listed as the 47th richest man in the world with an estimated net worth of $15.4 billion. He allegedly won his billions through ties to organized crime in the 1990s. Akhmetov issued a statement on March 2nd. "I state with all due responsibility that SCM Group, which today employs 300,000 people and represents Ukraine from west to east and from north to south, will do everything possible to maintain the integrity of our country." According to Wikipedia, Akhmetov was a former enforcer and leader of a Kotbragins Tatar clan or mafia, responsible for the use of mafia methods to push aside the Red directors of the Industrial Union of the Donbass. Wait, there's something missing here? Remember what I said about pathological narcissists? They are never wrong even when you catch them in an outright inconsistency. America and the EU, being narcissist bedfellows, back each other up in their prevarications, one playing the carrot while the other does the stick routine. It is clear that America has double standards, but then most narcissists do. Remember, they are exempt from the rules the rest of us have to follow. We can invade Iraq and Afghanistan on dubious abstract grounds, but yet Russia is evil for protecting their own interests. All we have to do is claim to be bringing democracy and enforcing tolerance at the end of a drone strike, when in reality, we did it to control key resources and to make billions for the military-industrial complex, like Blackwater and other private contractors. We have come so far from the nation we used to be that we are actually supporting far-right groups sporting Thunderbolt SS symbols. I thought we outgrew this infantile garbage, but it makes sense in that we ourselves have become a corporate fascist empire. See Citizens United. Money equals speech. At this time in Kiev, the people are dealing with a far-right, illegitimate, unelected coup run by fascist thugs. There are videos of governors and journalists being harassed and forced to resign just for speaking their mind or presenting a conflicting side. The EU cannot afford to bail out Ukraine's debt, and if the EU gets its claws in Ukraine, austerity will hit the land like a hammer because fascism takes better root in a deteriorating economy. Some European nations see clearly that the EU is another way of undermining a country's sovereignty by imposing debt slavery. And if there is one thing the EU is allergic to, it is referendums, especially if they are not in line with what the EU bureaucracy wants. You cannot have true sovereignty without control of your own currency. The more centralized a currency, the less power below, the more hierarchical, as power goes to the top. Decentralization of currency and resource control is a true trickle down to the bottom, which is why cryptocurrencies and a resource-based economy are both essential to liberty. From homelessness and rising hunger in Britain, to desperation in both Spain and Italy, to pensioners being robbed in Cyprus, the EU has brought devastation to almost every country it has touched. They have been effectively made into vassals and tributes in order to serve Berlin. Perhaps that's where Europe can send its young to participate in future dystopic Hunger Games. In conclusion, dear readers, don't believe the Cold War propaganda you watch on lamestream media. It was tired and old in the 1980s, and it's even more obnoxious that they think we are dim-witted enough to believe it now. Threats of sanctions will not make Russia back down, as Putin, as vile as he can be, sees the black kettle, which is Obama. With Ukraine owing over $2 billion in gas bills to Russia and Russia being the main provider of gas to Ukraine, there is little chance that Russia will be hurt, and more so Ukraine. Add to that, the American economy is substantially weaker than Russia's at the moment. So there you go. It won't work. And the people of Ukraine deserve a government elected of their own choosing, not a far-right fascist coup supported by the West. Don't believe me? Do some real research yourself. But being that most people are too lazy for that, by all means, allow the corporate media to spoon-feed you feces. Just remember, you are what you eat.